Welcome, dear listeners, to a fresh episode of Educator Insights, the podcast that explores the ever evolving world of teaching in the digital age and how to embrace technology. I'm your host, Husena Jadliwala, and today we're excited to introduce a true pioneer in education. Please join me in welcoming Tyler Rust, a highly accomplished National Board certified educator from Pleasanton Unified School District, who is also a historian. In this episode, get ready for an engaging journey as we delve into the discussion of lessons through time, AI's impact on education. Tyler, it's a privilege to have you here today sharing your knowledge and insights.
Thank you, Hussein. It's really wonderful to be here with you.
Awesome. I think what might be a good place to start, because I'm sure our listeners are curious about this as well, is if you could share a little bit about your journey to becoming a National Board certified educator and historian.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for asking. Becoming a national board certified teacher was actually a long time in the making. It's not something that many teachers do. I think there's only about 8% of all teachers in the
Oh,
United
wow.
States who are national board certified. I would liken it to an additional master's degree in terms of the length of time and the amount of work I had to do to get it. But I started out this journey to be a social studies teacher in public education, really because I thought that was the place I could have the greatest impact on what I thought was probably one of the biggest needs that I saw when I came out of school, which was a lack of civic education, a lack of solid understanding, solid critical thinking skills. And I wanted to be part of working with young people to help to build that. I got a lot of fulfillment out of it, but along the way, I decided I wanted to become the best educator I could be and to become the best historian that I could be. And so I became a national board certified teacher and got a second master's degree in history along the way. And it's been worth every minute of it. I've used all of that in the course of my 20 plus years in the classroom.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I have a feeling we're going to end up talking a lot about critical thinking in this conversation, considering that it is about AI. So let's get into the heart of our discussion here.
I'm always excited to talk about critical thinking.
Could you tell us about the most important advancements in AI technology that have influenced classroom teaching, particularly from a historical standpoint?
Well, all right. So this is very new. So I'm not necessarily an expert on all of the advances in AI that have been around. I can really just give you my perspective, what I've seen in the school that I work in and with the educators I work with. In a very short amount of time, though, I've seen a lot of changes. And some of it is going in a very positive way, and some of it is a kind of a very concerning way also. So I would say my observations begin last year when ChatGPT really hit the public awareness, and I started to see students using AI to complete their assignments without any sort of awareness for the teachers that they were using this very powerful tool to essentially circumvent the requirements of what was designed for them to help make them better thinkers and better writers. So that was concerning that we would see things like ChatGPT immediately being abused by students to undermine the real purpose of their education. And teachers began to notice fairly quickly because it's pretty obvious. As a teacher, you know what your students are capable of doing. And when they hand in work that is far beyond their capabilities in a short amount of time, you naturally want to wonder why. So teachers were able to figure out what was going on very quickly. And then we all went and looked at ChatGPT and realized just how big of a sea change this really represented. I think that it's an opportunity as well as a challenge. What I see in AI right now, and this is in the last 12 months that I've
Hmm.
watched the capacity of AI change, the functionality and its applications in the classroom begin to grow and in a sense metastasize faster than I think teachers or students can really anticipate and utilize these changes. So I'm excited about what this means, but I also think there's a lot of pitfalls that we're going to run into along the way. And I don't see many ways to avoid it either.
Yeah, and I think that whole idea of avoiding it, frankly speaking, I don't think it is something that can be avoided. It would be silly for an educator to think that I'll keep my students away from it. students are smart. They're going to find a way to use it one way or the other. And it's something that's growing every day.
Well, and
So,
they should use it, right? It's going to
yes,
be part of their lives. And
yes,
in education, you're always wondering, how can I prepare these students for what they need in a real life situation, post secondary school, post whatever educational situation they're in. The
yes.
task is to get them ready, and they're going to be using AI because people are already using AI in the business world and in the
Exactly. It's
professional.
going to be a part of their daily life. So prepare them for it rather than avoid it. I think that's the idea here, which really brings me to the next part of the conversation here, which is you mentioned that there are pitfalls. Of course, we know that. But there must be
Mm.
also ways that we can use AI to help tailor learning experiences for students. And then also to keep in mind that we need to address the potential for AI to worsen educational inequalities. So, what are your thoughts on these?
Yeah, this is the conundrum. This is the real challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you see AI and what it can do for students, it really, I think, in a sense, gives pause to what we're already teaching in schools. Critical thinking, reading skills, literacy skills, writing skills. All of these things are going to be fundamentally challenged by AI in a very short amount of time, to the point that, when students are asked to write and analyze and reflect, the question is going to become why. AI is going to be able to do that for me. And there's really no answer to that, to say, well, no, we want you just because it's good for you. That falls
Mm-hmm.
flat with every student. You've got to really reinvent the need for them to learn these traditional essential skills, as I would see them, in an AI environment. Right? Why do they need to know how to write if AI is going to be able to do it better than they can and with a click of a button? I've heard that content as we know it is going to go to zero. That's a phrase I've heard a lot about. How basically the cost or the price or the input to create new content is going to fall to zero, and so students are going to be able to create wildly wonderful things with
Mm-hmm.
a very little effort. Now, as an educator, how do I judge that? How do I evaluate that? How do I challenge them to grow in that? Those are questions that I think we're still working on.
Which is fair. And I think there is a lot that teachers might have already dealt with while it's not necessarily related with AI. Technology in itself has evolved in a way that teachers have had to deal with it. AI is yet another turning point in the use of technology in the classroom. I think I mentioned to you about that I teach math,
Yes.
and this is not necessarily related to AI, but I was teaching the topic of money to a student who really did not want to learn it, and I asked her why, and she said, honestly, we're just going to be tapping our card. Why do I need to know about change? And why do I need to know about what the note even looks like? And those were valid questions. But at the same time, just bringing her back to why it is important to know how to calculate money, even if you're going to use a card for everything. She was very young. She was maybe grade three. She probably
Okay.
didn't understand, the impact of learning about money in a bigger sense, because just because you tap a card doesn't mean you need to know where that money is going, right?
Oh,
You need to know
yes.
if you got everything back that you needed to get back, for example. So these are all things that teachers have been dealing with since all of these were created, which is years ago. I mean, credit cards were created very, very long time ago. So um, I'm sure that this is yet another thing that teachers will have to deal with, but it's not impossible to, and it's more important than that. It is important to get students to understand why they need to be ahead of AI. In fact, they need to think better than AI. They cannot rely on AI
Oh,
to do all
absolutely.
their
No,
work for
I
them.
totally agree. In fact, this is something I was talking about with some teachers the other day.
Mm-hmm.
One of the courses I teach is 12th grade civics. So I was with the other 12th grade teachers, and we were talking about what's this semester going to look like, because we're trying to kind of align our teaching, and we started talking about our usual activities, our usual lesson plans, our usual projects, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
then we started talking about AI, and it occurred to me that we could write our entire course just around the how AI is going to affect civic education or the
Mm-hmm.
elements of civics. For example, I said, we could just go through the first 10 amendments to the Constitution and have every student just say, all right, Amendment 1, your question is, how is AI going to impact our rights under the First Amendment in the next 18 to 24 months? Go and research it. And feel free to use AI to research it. but don't
Hmm.
just rely only on AI. Respond to what AI says about what AI is going to
I love
do
that.
to our First Amendment rights in the next 18 to 24 months. And then you go on to Amendment 2, Amendment 4, Amendment 5. And that alone could be a course in itself, because I don't think a lot of people, much less my students, actually understand how bad AI is going to affect, not bad, but how widespread the effect of AI is going to be on just our rights in this society within the very short amount of time. We're talking like between now and the next election. And that, in a sense, would be something that students need to know, because my students are going to vote in the next election, and they wouldn't know otherwise. They'd actually have to go out and do fresh research, some critical thinking, some analysis, and they could use
Hmm.
AI to do it.
I love how you said that you should think about how to respond to what AI is suggesting. I think that is important, not to just take what results you get from AI at surface level, to really think about what is being conveyed to you through AI, to think about whether that is, truly what is going to happen. There's a lot of predictions that AI makes. To have to have that ability to think about it more critically. I think that's important for
Well,
students to
but
do.
it's also a part of the challenge too. See, here, the other side of this coin is when you see AI is coming, and you know it's going to be a tidal wave of change for the lives of these kids, for all of our society in every way, shape, and form. What education fails to do is it fails to be proactive about these things. Right. So if
Mhm.
I were to go back to that example of rewriting my civics course curriculum based upon AI and how it's going to affect, say, the 10 amendments, first 10 amendments to the Constitution, I couldn't do that, because the way traditional public education works is it's very reactive, and it's very aligned with what everyone else is doing. Teachers are under a lot of pressure to do the same units that other teachers are doing, so that all students will have a common experience as they go through school. So they don't just get one teacher's interpretation of civics and another teacher's interpretation of civics, that every student who's taking civics is getting the same experience in that course, which therefore necessarily mutes innovation and change. So when something
Mhm.
like AI comes along and you want to take advantage of the opportunity to get your kids ready for the coming tidal wave of change, you really can't. There's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of, why are you doing it differently than everyone else?
I can totally relate to that. And I loved how you compared it as, proactive versus reactive. It's true. There is more reactive actions that are being done by teachers rather than proactive. And I think this actually brings us to the next part of my conversation with you, which is
Okay.
really about thinking about the role of teachers. Because in a world with AI tutors, for example, what would you see as the most valuable role for teachers in the classroom?
Right. So AI tutors are really interesting. And what that's going to look like, I think, is not necessarily what we imagine a traditional tutor to be.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, AI is going to rewrite the definitions of all these roles. And so an AI tutor might actually be a more effective educator than an in person board certified teacher like myself, simply because the AI is going to have much more detailed and intimate knowledge of the student than I will
Mm-hmm.
have the chance to gather within the few months that I have them in my classroom. These AI are going to know the students better immediately because of the sheer amount of data they're going to have about their students. And they're going to be able to track, monitor, and adapt to their growing learning needs over the course of their time with the
Mm-hmm.
student much faster and much more effectively than any human being could possibly do. Now, that doesn't mean that human beings aren't needed in the classroom. Students, as we can tell from the pandemic effect, students need that human connection. But
Yes.
do they need a national board certified teacher with 2 master's degrees and 20 years of experience? I don't think so. What I think AI tutors are going to do is that they're going to become the better teachers, and the students are going to maybe need an aide, a counselor, an assistant in the room, the human being who can help them with their emotional needs. But even that, even the emotional needs of the students, ultimately, I think, might even be better addressed by personal AIs that will again have more intimate and complete knowledge of the students. So in terms of teachers in the classroom, I think there'll always be a need, because it's not one size fits all. But I think a lot of what the teaching role has traditionally been will be fundamentally changed and taken over by AI.
That's a really interesting perspective. Um, you mentioned about teachers being more of an aid, with the AI tutors kind of taking forefront. There's a lot of fear right now in education that is there going to am I going to lose my job?
Yes,
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's true. I think in a very short amount of time, we are going to see a drop off in the need for new teachers, which may be actually a good thing because no one is becoming a teacher right now. The
I
effects of
was
the
about to say,
pandemic,
yeah,
no one is going into educational programs. Educational
there's
teacher programs are shutting down around the country,
there's
and
definitely a
frankly, school
scarcity.
districts are struggling to find anyone to fill these jobs. And so AI might be coming along at just the right time for districts and just the wrong time for teachers because it's going to be easier to meet the needs of students with AI than ever before. And you're not going to necessarily need to have all these qualified, highly trained, highly educated individuals in the classroom. Now, I think the adjustment's going to be swift and it's going to be dramatic, but it's also not just going to be education. If educators can
Yeah,
be replaced by AI, so can doctors, lawyers, accountants, and other white collar professions. And I'm not the first to say that. I mean, I'm just passing this along. I've heard this from a variety of sources. And what I don't think is being said is that this is coming in a matter of months, not years.
that is certainly an interesting way to look at it, and I don't disagree. I've heard that too. But there is one more role in education, in a student's life, which is that of a parent, right?
Mm. Hmm.
So
Yes.
we have spoken about how AI is changing a student's life. We've talked about how AI has changed a teacher's life. Now, when we talk about parents, how can parents play a role here? How can they support their kids in this, tech-driven learning environment? And do you have any practical advice for parents who might find all of this really overwhelming?
Yeah, no, I think we have a crossroads situation here, not just with parents, but with students, because AI is going to be so enticing to a student. Because, like I said, AI is going to know them better than even their best friends. And AI is going to have the ability to show compassion, understanding, sympathy, empathy that a student might not get in the same way and in the same amount that they would get from friends and family. And so I think the crossroads is that students might actually just withdraw to their AI. They'll have an AI for everything they want, educationally, personally, whatever they need. There'll be an AI there to soothe them, to nurture them, to be their friend. And that might be too enticing. Students might withdraw into their AI world. And if I was a parent, and I am a parent, I'd be terrified about what that could do to a young person.
Yeah,
And so if parents need to, of course, be involved as good parents always are, and encourage an outer experience, a non-online AI experience for their children. And it might require, a radical rethinking of what education is from in the classroom to experiential learning out in the world where AI isn't necessarily going to be applicable, right? We might need to get out of the classroom more, and students and teachers and parents might need to be more engaged in a experiential learning model than they would be a traditional book and paper model in the classroom.
that is a very valid point. The idea of a student withdrawing into their AI, just the thought of it, frankly speaking, scares me.
Yeah,
And I'm not even a parent.
yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that if learning in a traditional way is no longer relevant and a student needs to understand how to apply their learning outside of the classroom and that becomes the focus, then that makes perfect sense for us to try to shift to in the world of education. I think
I
that's
mean, I
a
mean, maybe just to put a little finer finish on what I was saying is that you'll have the ability with AI to do unbelievable things with students, and students will have unbelievable ways to show us their understanding. Like I said, when content goes to zero, students will be able to make video content that we could only imagine from Hollywood. And they're going to be able to make that with just the push of a few buttons.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be able to, for example, create a video reenacting the signing of the Treaty of Versailles with the big four leaders after World War One, and they'll be able to, with the help of AI, create a dialogue, a script, of this interaction to display in a very wildly creative way their understanding of the events that ended that time period, that event of World War One, which would be amazing, and I can't wait for that to happen. And that's what we want. We want students to be able to express rather than just withdraw. And so, what the challenge for teachers and parents and students will be is to see this as an opportunity to be more outgoing in their expression, in their understanding, rather than more withdrawn, as we saw with cell phones, where everything's online rather than in the real world. But I think that's the crossroads. Students could easily do what they did with cell phones and just have an online digital world that they live in, only much more damaging than cell phones have been. Or they can use this as a way to show the outer world, everyone around them, what their life lived experiences really mean to them.
I love that so much. And I love something that you said about expression, like using AI to express so that it's outward and it's not withdrawn. But talking about that, the idea of expression, it brings up the topic of the ethical aspects of technology. So, what are your thoughts on some ethical considerations that we should all keep in mind, whether you're a student, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, with regards to AI and tech in education? And what mistake should we try to avoid in this digital era?
Right. So with ethics, that's a really important one because I think we don't have a lot of um, traditional education around ethical education. A lot of that's expected to be done at the home. And so, in school, we just expect that students won't cheat or plagiarize. But when they do, there are some responses that we've traditionally had. And those tend not to be institutional responses. They tend to be teacher by teacher. So some teachers will handle cheating and plagiarism one way, other teachers will handle it another way. Depends on the student, depends on the situation. But with AI, students are already using it to write their college applications or their college essays, which is essentially unauthentic. It's essentially not who they really are. Teachers are already seeing students handing in major research papers that are mostly written by AI, which really undermines the true value of what they're being asked to do. So I think we really need to start teaching ethics around AI so that students know that it's okay to use AI, but you have to use it in a way that's honest, open, and transparent. So that you tell everyone, here's what the AI did for me, here's what I did using the AI, and that there's no shame in being honest about, hey, you use this tool, so just tell everyone you use this tool. We just have to teach them like this is how you honestly and openly take credit for your work, and how you honestly and openly explain how you did it using AI. If that's the case, then we can, then get more narrow and say, well, you should only use AI for this amount of your work or in this aspect of your work. So we're just going to be teaching going forward all the new ways that AI is going to affect students. But the sooner we get out in front of this and start saying we need a code of ethics around AI and an expectation that we're all going to hold them to, then students will know and they will be easily held to that standard. I've always felt that if you set your standards high and you set them clearly, students will rise to them and they will conform to them. But without any clear, direction, students are naturally going to want to try to cut corners and seem, more proficient than they really are.
That is definitely a valid point. I was thinking about what you said about being able to teach this in the classroom. So a student, you see, the idea of plagiarism, for example, is not something that is new, right? The internet has been there for a while. Students have a lot of information on the internet which they can find. They can use some of it. They may use some of it wholesale, for example. The problem that lies with AI is that, is it plagiarism if it's not? It's something that the AI has said, right? It's not something that I've copied from someone else. No other human being is involved in this situation.
Right.
So is that plagiarism? That is a question. And I think these are type of questions that need to be asked in these type of learning environments when we're talking about that, when we're talking about ethics in using AI in the classroom.
Yeah, so
So,
like if I were to go back, like an example might help here.
mhm,
So I already explained how AI could be used as the curriculum in my civics course. How
mhm,
is AI going to affect the First Amendment in the next 18 to 24 months? If that's one inquiry question for my students. Well, together in class, I would type that question into an AI, whatever it
mhm.
might be, and the answer would come back immediately, and the answer would have multiple facets to it, because, of course, the First Amendment has multiple facets to it. Well, all right, so that would be required for my students to show me what the AI told you the answer was. And from that point on, show me how your own response to that would be. Like, if this is how AI is going to affect this aspect of the First Amendment, then you explain to me what we should do to best anticipate and adapt to that impact in your own words, with other sources maybe included that guided you to that answer. Right. So show me the AI work, but then show me your own work and explain how it's different, and authentic. Right. So that's one way I think you could use AI in a classroom.
That's amazing. And I actually just read about this in some classrooms in Denmark. That is actually an approach that they are taking, where you use AI and then you write your own, you talk about the differences. And I think that's a really wonderful approach of using AI effectively in the classroom on the student end. But there is also one other aspect that I want to quickly cover here, which is on effective methods for training educators to use AI tools in the classroom.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
you know, what are your thoughts around it, especially for those who might not be as comfortable with this type of technology?
Well, I don't think that's much of a challenge. From the tools that I myself have used in just the last 12 months, they're amazingly convenient. uh, AI tools do the difficult work that teachers have had to do since there have been teachers, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, you know, creation of rubrics, creation of test questions, breaking down videos into usable formats. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, AI can do a lot of things that takes teachers a long time to do on their own. And so it's a huge time saver, which is a bonus that every teacher is looking for, so that they can be more present for their students and they don't have to constantly be grading, constantly be preparing, constantly be planning. AI can really take up a lot of those tasks that teachers might not want to waste their time doing, so that they can be in the room with their kids and share their personality, their understanding, to make the what the AI is helping them do really come alive to a young person. So I don't think there'll be a hard sell with educators, because the tools, even the rudimentary tools that are available free right now from a variety of different sources, are so convenient and useful in ways that I think every teacher is going to jump on. And even if they're not quick to adopt technology, these tools are so easy to use. It only takes a few moments for them to figure out exactly how they want to use them.
Yeah, and while AI, I think, has been trained, it's taken a long time, I think, for any of these companies to train the AI to churn out information or churn out questions, like you said, or assessments or videos or anything that a teacher can use in the classroom. This was all the training from human anyway. I don't think I mentioned this to you before, but I did actually work freelance for OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT,
Wonderful.
a few years ago in 2018 or so. And my main role was just to write thousands and thousands of word problems to feed into the machine. So a math word problem. So as a math educator, obviously I have the experience with that. And so the AI, then now whatever, I'm not saying that I'm not taking credit for any of the word problems that the AI churns out now. But what I'm saying is that alongside me, I'm sure there were many others who contributed to this. And we all human beings who contributed to the machine learning, which now is churning out questions or other learning material curriculum, like you said, that teachers can now use in the classroom. So there is obviously some thought process, something that the creators of this AI have taken into account before releasing it. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, uh,
it's pretty exciting.
it is. It definitely is. I also want to say it's just an exciting time in general for all of us.
I really think that's important for us to stay on that exciting side of it, right? I think a
Yeah.
lot of time, because it's such going to be such a radical change. The initial reaction might be, "Oh, I'm afraid of how this is going to affect things, and I'm not going to want to do it." But it's really exciting for what this could mean for education in the future if we see it as an opportunity and not as an obstacle.
Yes. I love that. Treat it as an opportunity and not as an obstacle. Our conversation has been really enlightening, Tyler. But before we conclude, I'm curious about your thoughts on the classroom of the future. You mentioned a little bit about this, about the role of the teacher in the classroom of the future. But let's imagine it. How might it differ from what we see today? If you could paint us a picture.
Right. So I think it goes back to this idea of content going to zero, right? The cost or the effort of content being just available at the tips of our fingers. I can imagine that students are going to be able to be transported to a variety of different environments, at least in terms of history, which is so much about storytelling. But all teaching is really about storytelling. And so, if I wanted to put my students in a moment in history and present to them a decision that they need to make and to have them explain it in their own words, I can do that in ways that are going to be really exciting and really easy to do. With AI, you're going to be able to say, I need to create a 5-minute video starring Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, and George Clooney, in which they are playing Stalin and Winston Churchill and Franklin Delano Roosevelt debating what to do after the Nazis surrender at the end of World War II at the Tehran Conference. And AI will be able to put together that 5-minute scene, and I'll be able to review it, adapt it, and then show it to my students in a very short amount of time in a way that'll be interesting and fun and high quality presentation. And we're talking like Hollywood level movie presentation. And I'll be able to
Mhm.
do that on my own in a matter of moments. And then I'll be able to present my students with that conundrum, that critical thinking moment, and use that as a discussion starter, use that as a short answer writing prompt, use that as a debate topic, use that as a prompt for them to do their own video content, video expression, starring stars of their own with their own answers. I mean, it's just the world is going to be so open to creative responses in the future for education, both from the teacher and the student. It's going to be enormously exciting. And it doesn't mean we're going to give up on textbooks and primary sources and math problems, word problems, the traditional things we're used to. It just means we're going to have an unlimited amount of possibility on how to present that in a more creative, visually enticing, and thought provoking way.
I 100% agree. It's definitely going to be very exciting to see that picture that you have painted. It would be so amazing to see that in the near future, as long as we all stay
It'd be amazing to
open
see
to this.
Brad Pitt
Yeah.
as Winston Churchill.
Yes, it will. So, as we wrap up this episode, I just want to express our heartfelt thanks to you again, Tyler. Thank you so much for coming on this episode with us and for sharing your passion, your knowledge. You've definitely brightened our journey through this fascinating world of AI's impact on education.
Oh, it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for bringing me on. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. So, for our listeners, we've traveled together through a landscape of knowledge and wonder, and we hope you have found inspiration in our conversation. We're concluding for now, but the conversation doesn't have to stop. Keep sharing your thoughts on social media using our favorite hashtag, Magic Educator Insights. Your insights and reflections add magic to our podcast. Thank you once more for tuning in, and until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those curious minds buzzing. Stay magical.